Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're in Masechtas Be'ah Daf Dalid. We are going to begin about 10 lines from the top of Dalid Amud Aleph with the words Rav Ashi Omer. So Rav Ashi says, and Rashi immediately reminds us of what we were talking about before. Haditani, when we mentioned before in Gimel Amud Beis, Sveika Aser, Safik Yom Tov, Safik Chol Kamer. We asked the question, when it came to an egg, how is it that we said that if it's a doubt that we go strict? Don't we usually hold that we say Safik D'Rabban L'Kula? In the cases of Mashin Shazavu, Paris and Notion, these are all Gzeros, they're D'Rabbanan. So why would we say that it's Aser? So we said maybe if it's really Din D'Oraisa, if we hold Hachana D'Rabba, which is D'Oraisa, and therefore Safik D'Oraisa L'Chul, we go strict. However, what if you don't hold of that opinion? So then it's a little bit problematic. So we said, well, maybe we're not talking about an egg that was born in Yom Tov, we're talking about an egg which is a Safik Treifa, and of course that's something which is a continuous issue. And then we asked the question, so what, that should be Batal. So we said maybe it's not Batal because either perhaps it's a davar chashiv, a davar shibaminyan. So that's the reason. Okay, and which brings us now to this question: why, if we're dealing with an egg which we hold is only din d'Rabbanan, if it's a din d'Rabbanan, why would we say that in case of a suffix you can't eat it today? Why not? Well, we hold suffix d'Rabban l'Kula. So the Gemara says, "Olam suffix Yom Tov suffix Chol, havi davar sheishel matirin." Again, as we mentioned before, the whole davar sheishel matirin nafil midrabbanan lo batal. There's a tremendous chiddush that even though normally we have this rule that when there's a doubt, and it's rabbinic, Safik D'Rabban L'Kula, but that's only a situation where the thing can't change. Why would you even do something which is an Isser D'Rabbanan, possible Isser, when you can do it completely permissible? And therefore, the concept of a Davar Sheishel Matirin, right now it's Yom Tov. Tomorrow is the weekday. I certainly could eat the egg tomorrow. So therefore, we say in the case of a suffix, we're not going to say that you're allowed to eat this egg. Okay, Tanya, Acherim Oyimrim. So the Acherim said Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, the following statement: Beitzah ta'oichel, an egg can be eaten. He ve'ima, not only the egg, but also the tarnagolis, its mother. So b'maiskina, what exactly do they mean when they say this statement? If we're talking about that the tarnagolis is designated that you're going to eat it, which of course you're allowed to shecht on Yom Tov, so pshita dihi ve'ima sharia, as we said before, uchad ufras. The egg is like an extension of food from the tarnagolis. So if you're allowed to eat the chicken, then certainly you should be able to eat the egg. So rather, that would be no chiddush for him to mention it. Of course it's mutter. So what must be talking about? A tarnagolis that in itself the mother was not designated to eat. The whole purpose was for it to lay eggs. So it's a tremendous chiddush. Hiv ima surah. You would actually say the opposite. You would think that actually the mother and the egg is usher, because after all, it's something in which is muksa. So Amrav Zera ta'oichel agav ima. It just means that you could eat it agav the mother. Says Rashi, im oichlenes ima hayom ta'ochel afi. That if you eat the mother today, you can also eat it. So hechidami. Amrabai kigayin shalacha stam. It's talking about a situation where you purchased this tarnagolis and there was no stipulations as to its purpose of why you were doing it. Nishchata, therefore, if you shechted the tarnagolis, then huvra delachiloi menas. And it's obvious that the reason why you did it, you made this purchase, is so you could eat it. And therefore, of course, you're allowed to eat it. In the case of a lo nishchata, where you don't shecht it, then huvra delgado beitzah menas. Then it's very clear that the purpose of this was for to lay eggs, and therefore, in that situation, it would be usher. So therefore, it's coming to tell you that even in the case of stam, in the case where you shecht it, it is mutter. Okay, Rav Mari Omer Guzma Katani. He says that all it's telling you is an exaggeration. It says, what's a guzma? Rashi says, "Ka'adam shiraitz l'hachzik devarav medavar yoser." He wants to strengthen his words. V'oimedes l'achil kaimer. Really, we're talking about a tarnagoylis that is designated for food. So the question is, what is the chiddush? So v'nechalik al beis Hillel hasurin, and this is going against beis Hillel who asers such a thing. The imo l'srichle. According to him, you obviously don't need to mention the mother because he holds, it's obviously for food. El gazim v'oimer milsi asera. It's coming to add this extra thing. Hakol yoichel. You could eat the whole thing. Gam es ha'av, gam es ha'aim, or we're going to decide gam es ha'ben. What does it mean gam es ha'av? So gam es ha'aim. Okay. So you're right. He's not really telling you this huge chiddush. He's just saying you could eat the whole thing. That's an expression of saying no problem. You could eat it. You can eat the tarnagoylis and its egg, and everything is fine. Okay. So again, it's just considered to be a guzma. Right there in the Gemara. So the Gemara says like this. Let me just find where I am now. Guzma katan. The Sanya. Acherem oimer mishum Rabbi Lezer Beitzah toichel hiv ima ve'efroyach v'kli pasai. You can eat the efroach, the chickling, and its shell. So my kli pasai. Ileim a klipa mamish klipa basachili. What does it mean you can eat the shell? You can't. Who eats the shell of an egg? El efroach b'kli pasai. It's coming to tell you that you can even eat the efroach while it's in its klipa. So again, it's just coming to tell you that everything is allowed. So ad kan lo pligi Rabban Alecha Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. The only time that they argue is elahecha di yatzal aver oilam. Is only the situation where it actually went out. Says Rashi, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, oser efraichim shel niftachu eineihem. They argue regarding an efrayach in which their eyes did not open. The pligi Rabban Alecha, and we're going to explain why. Abul hecha de lo yatza la'aver ha'oilam lo pligi. In a situation where it never came out to the world, then they don't argue. So therefore, certainly it's not telling you the situation, again, that it's talking about Efrayach b'kli paso, because the whole machlokas between Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov is only where it was Yatzel Aver Oilam. We have never left the Aver Oilam, everyone holds that's not allowed. So the question is, so what does it mean, Efrayach b'klipa? So it doesn't mean you're going to really eat the klipa, but it just means the guzma. It just means you could eat the whole thing. Okay, so that's all it means. Itmar. Shabbos v'Yom Tov. Says Rashi. Hasmuchim. Let's say if Shabbos and Yom Tov back to back. But who didn't Yom Tov? Shabbos, it could be either way. Either Yom Tov could be on a Friday, then you have Shabbos, or Shabbos, then you have on Sundays Yom Tov. The question is, there's 2 days of holiness next to each other. How do we view them? So Rav Omer no l'bazeh sur bazeh. If let's say an egg was born on the first day, it's usher on the second. So let's just use the language of the Gemara. If it was born on Shabbos, you can't eat it on Yom Tov either. Rabbi Yochanan no l'bazeh v'teres bazeh. If it was born on Shabbos, you can eat it the next day. So Nemek Savar Rav Kedusha Achasi. Well, Chayra Rav who says no l'bazeh sur bazeh, it must be because he holds that when you have 2 days of holiness back to back, it's considered to be like 1 day of holiness, and therefore, as Rashi says, Hari hein ki yom echad oruch. It's like one long day, and therefore, once it's usher today, tomorrow is really not tomorrow. It's like the same day. That it's kedusha achasi. Rav says the halacha is ka'ar b'zakenim v'aliba de Rabbi Lezer the omer shtei kedusha saying. The halacha is actually that it's shtei kedushos. So it's hard to understand this because l'chayra, he's not going to argue with this. The halacha is that when it comes to Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's considered to be shtei kedushos. They're considered to be 2 separate days, and therefore, l'chayra, based on this logic, you should say no b'zeh, muter b'zeh. Ella hacha b'hachana d'Rabba k'mifagi. The argument is by the din of hachana d'Rabba. Rav islei hachana d'Rabba, Rav Yochanan leislei hachana d'Rabba. The whole machlokus is, do you hold of this din of hachana d'Rabba? And therefore, as Rashi says, the omer hachana b'di shemayim. You didn't prepare it, but it was prepared from Hashem. It was born on Shabbos. So therefore, will we say that it needed to have been prepared from before, and since it wasn't prepared from before, it's going to be usher also on the second day. Okay. So that is the machlokas. But the truth is, perhaps ketanoi. This whole concept may be a machlokas among tanoim. How do we see this? It says, no the b'Shabbos. Let's say an egg is born on Shabbos, toichel b'yomtiv. B'yomtiv toichel b'Shabbos. Which again sounds very much like one of our shitas. The Yehuda Omer Mishra ben Eliezer and Dain hi machlokas. No, the machlokas also pertains not just to the day, but also the next day as well. Shebei Shami Omrim obviously toichel. He says you can eat it on that day, so certainly the next day. Beis Hillel Omrim lo toichel. Beis Hillel says you can't even eat it not only on Shabbos but also on the next day as well. Not b'zeh aser b'zeh. Ushbezinchu chay the Rav Ado Barava Pavili Hanach Beitzim. So this guest, this host, he had these eggs miyom tov Shabbos. Our situation, but it's the other way around, but it's the same idea. The question is, are you allowed to eat those eggs on Shabbos? So Asakam, he went in front of him. Amalei, my letinhu ha'inna. Can I roast them today, which is today's Yom Tov, Friday, and benechlinhu lamachar, and then I'll eat it tomorrow. So Amalei, my daitach. Rav Yochanan halacha Rav Yochanan. You think that when you have Rav against Rav Yochanan, the halacha is typically like Rav Yochanan, and therefore we're lenient. I feel Rav Yochanan lo kashari. The only time he allowed el legoima lamachar, to swallow it raw the next day, of a b'yoima lo, for you to roast it today, that even he says you're not allowed to do it. As Rashi says, miyasiri batiltul bo b'yoima lo. L'chayra, it's something which you're not allowed to move on the day that is born. V'hasanya, as we learn, as Rashi says, tiyata, this is the proof. It says, achas beitzah shanol de b'Shabbos, v'achas beitzah shanol de b'yomtiv, ematalto noisa, lo l'chasas posa kli, lo yismach bo kari mita. So we saw in yesterday's daf that when it's born, not only can you not eat it, you're also not allowed to move it. You can't do anything with it. So for you to think that you can roast it, no. The whole question is, are you allowed to on the next day? Are you allowed to? When they say you could eat it on that day, you can't roast that. You can't eat it. You can't do anything. But when it says no the bezeh muta bezeh, you can't roast it today in order for the next day. So that certainly is not allowed. Okay, weiter. Ushbezincha the Rav Papa v'yermela hahu gavra diasachim the Rav Papa. He went in front of Rav Papa. Havile hanach beitzim b'Shabbos liyom tov. So over here is the opposite. It was born on Shabbos, and then on Sunday is Yom Tov. Asakamei armalei mahu lemachlinu lemachar. Can I eat it on Sunday on Yom Tov? Armalei zil ha'idna v'tal machar. He says, you know what? Today Shabbos, not a great day. Come back tomorrow. So this great person says that, so you do it. The Rabbi Mikey Amaru leha miyom etavel lechavre. He would not paskin from one day to the next. Mishum shichur, says Rashi. The Rab Oirule Moiri, b'drasha shelo, he was paskining when he teach, and it says in Krisos, a shikr is asul hayros. He's not allowed to paskin. As the pasuk says, Yan v'sheich al teisht, not allowed to drink intoxicated beverages. Except hayros says b'nei Israel. So he was saying, now is not a good time for me to answer this question because mishum shichus. So ki yasel machar. So again, he listened. He came back the next day. So it was Shabbos, now it's Yom Tov. Can I eat it now today? Armalei, he said as we continue to Daled Amabeis, ichu hashta ishtaloi. So he says that it says Rashi, im harasi lacha. If I hurried to paskind yesterday. Ishtaloi, shachachti v'shkagasi. I would have made a mistake. I would have erred. So it's good, a very interesting idea. When someone asks you a question, even if you think you know the answer, sometimes it's better to wait, especially if you had mishum shichros. But that's partially also the idea, is it's better for you to wait until you have a clear mind to be able to know what the din is. So he said, I'm glad that I didn't answer you yesterday. I'm glad I asked you to come back today, because if I would have answered you yesterday, I would have made a mistake. Because I would have said to you that din is like Rav Yochanan, which means Bein l'kula, bein l'chumra. We find that the halacha is actually like Rav regarding 3 items. It doesn't matter if sometimes we're lenient, sometimes we're strict. So actually, in this context, we would hold like Rav. Says Rashi, Shemel inyan Beitzah zu mishabes v'yom tov l'kamei. The second case is going to be Shnei Yomim Tov Shel Golios. So let's say it's a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and you're in New York. So the question is, what's the din of eating the egg on the second day of Yom Tov? So Nechel Hakel, there he goes lenient and allows you to eat the egg then. V'shlishi b'shnei yomim tovim shel Rosh Hashanah nechel lahachmer. On Rosh Hashanah, the second day, he's strict. So we're going to discuss this. However, again, when it comes to these dinim, he is we paskin like the shita of Rav, and as we saw already, Rav says no the mazeh is a surah bazeh. Shabbos v'yavtiv no the mazeh surah bazeh. So again, he would have paskin to say it was allowed, but he's actually strict when it comes to Rav's psak. No the bezeh on Shabbos, asur bezeh on the next day on Yom Tov. So the din again that we paskin like Rav in all circumstances by Shabbos and Yom Tov, by Shnei Yomim Tov Shel Golios, and also the Shnei Yomim Shel Rosh Hashanah. Okay, bein l'kula bein l'chumra. Rabbi Yochanan. Next piece. Eitzim shenishru min adeka. Let's say you have wood that fell from a tree and it fell on Shabbos, on Shabbos itself. Also hasikin b'Yom Tov. If let's say you had Shabbos and then the following day is now Yom Tov, you're not allowed to use that wood the following day. B'yal tashiveni Beitzah. Don't ask me a question about the egg that maybe you would say, don't you hold Rabbi Yochanan no the bezeh mutar bezeh, that if it was born on Shabbos you can eat the egg on Sunday. So if the wood fell on Shabbos, why can't you use the wood on Sunday? L'chara, you would want to ask me that very obvious question. So my time on Beitzah mishum diyoyma nami chaz l'goyma is because technically you could eat the egg whole. V'loy kasharilei adol machar, and the fact that we wait until the next day is maybe yadei de bas yerma asura. It's just to show people that it was usher on the day that it was born. But wood which is not fit on that day on Shabbos, obviously, you can't use it for firewood anyway. So if you use it tomorrow, if let's say it fell on a regular Yom Tov, the person would think, oh yeah, maybe I could also use it on the day it fell. The only reason why you couldn't use it, and you think maybe the only reason why you couldn't use it the day it fell was just because it was Shabbos, and of course on Shabbos you can't make a fire, you can't do havara. So you think, okay, but if it fell on a regular Yom Tov, so therefore a person would actually do it on the day itself. So even though Rabbi Yochanan holds no the bezeh is mutar bezeh, and he matters the second day, over here he'll be more strict, because otherwise a person will think that the only reason why you couldn't use the firewood the day it fell is because it was Shabbos. If it fell, let's say Yom Tov and then Shabbos, you would think maybe you could use it on that Yom Tov right away, and therefore he's strict. Okay. Omer Rav Masna Eitzim Shenishrim in a dekel. So we said again, you're not supposed to use this this wood that fell from a tree on Shabbos for the next day on Yom Tov. What happens if instead of it falling on the ground, Eitzim Shenishrim in a dekel l'teich tanur, fell right into your oven? It's pretty convenient. Yom Tov. So and it fell on Yom Tov. So marbeleh eitzim. So you already have the oven. So you can add wood which is muchanim, already prepared for this purpose. And with sikan you can kindle the fire. So therefore, what you end up having is this mixture of some of the firewood which was prepared from before, which of course you could always use, but even the firewood that fell in, which typically you would not be able to use, but it's acceptable. So the Gemara asks, how are you allowed to start moving around this wood that fell in? Well, you shouldn't be allowed to do it because you're moving around something in which in itself is usher. So the Gemara says like this, Kivan deruba de hateraninhu, but the majority, it was only a small amount of pieces of wood that fell in there. The majority of it is heter. And therefore, ki kamahapich behater kamahapich. And therefore, when you're moving it around, you're really moving around the majority of it, which is heter. So Gemara then asks, okay, So you have rov, and since the rov is heter, so therefore it's not a problem. But we have a different issue. If you have something in there which is already usser, how could you start adding a lot of prepared wood? That shouldn't be acceptable, because you're not allowed to be mavatal something l'chatchila. So let's say you have a non-kosher piece of meat. So even though there's a din of it could be batal, that doesn't mean you could start adding kosher food into it until it starts becoming the minority. That you're not allowed to do. It's not in mavatal isla l'chatchila. So Ryan says, yeah, that's true, but that's only how to be able to be deraisa. Only when it comes to a din deraisa do we say that you're not allowed to be mavatal and isla l'chatchila. But aval min rabbanan, when we're talking about a din derabanan, which is our case, because this wood, the issue is a muksa issue, which is derabanan, mevatalin. Fine. Rav ashid yamer kol davar sheishel matirin afil derabanan lo batal. As we began, that when you have something which could become permissible tomorrow, so this is something that could be permissible tomorrow. So ma'anik meimar. So how could you do this? That's only when the isur remains. When it comes to firewood, isura, it's going to end up being completely burnt up, and therefore, because it's going to be completely burnt up, therefore we don't have an issue with it. Question 9. So we said that din is only deraisa, but for dini d'rabbanan like muksa, we are mevatel. And then the next question that's asked over here in question 9 is, how could you be mevatel davar sheishel matirin? And the answer is, the whole issue of davar sheishel matirin is only if it remains. However, if it's something that will get destroyed, like firewood, then we don't say davar sheishel matirin, that is not batel. Itmar. Shnei yomim tovim shel goyis. So we talked about Shabbos and then Yom Tov then Shabbos, which again is a machlokas, what the din is, and we end up passing like Rav, which is l'chumra nilda b'zeh asur b'zeh. How about when it comes to a regular place in New York? Here you are, you want to keep the first 2 days of Sukkot, they fall on a Tuesday to Wednesday. What's the din of nilda b'zeh? Is it mutter or asur b'zeh? So Rav Omer, nilda b'zeh muteres b'zeh. Over here, again we pass like Rav, but over here he's lenient, and we're going to pass like him that nilda b'zeh mutter b'zeh. Rav Asi or nilda b'zeh asur b'zeh. So lema Rav sama Rav Asi kedusha achasi. L'chayra lema kasava Rav Asi kedusha achasi. The reason why Rav Asi must hold that shnei yom tamisha golius nilda b'zeh asur b'zeh, because he must hold it's considered like 1 day. Avahal Rav Asi ma'avdu b'yom hatav l'chavre. But we know that Rav Asi would make Havdalah from 1 day to the next. So how could he consider like 1 long day? For instance, Rav Asi Sivukim Safkele. He was actually unsure. He went strict on both sides. Maybe it's Shtei Kedusha, so he made Havdalah. However, maybe it's Kedusha Achas, and therefore Nilda B'zeh, also B'zeh. Question 10. Rav Asi Misafkele B'shnei Yom Tovim Shel Golias. Kedusha Achas. So what are the two chumras? As we said, Beish Nilda B'rishon Asur B'sheni. Dilma Kedusha Achasi. Hivdol miyom tev rishon l'sheni dilma sheni cholhu. Maybe the second day was a weekday. Weiter. Omer Rav Zera. Kavasid Rav Asi Mistaber. We don't pass like him. It's Mistaber that we're going to hold like him when it comes to Shnei Yom Shagalias, that we are strict. Why? Nowadays, what do we do in the year 2021? Yadina and B'Kvidiyarcha. We all know when the right day of the month is. We all know how the calendar is already preset. V'Kavdina and Trei Yomi. But nonetheless, we still do 2 days. Why do we do 2 days? So says Rashi, Kimon b'kved yercha al yidei cheshbon shevachashbon toldaso anu lomdim in nira b'yom shleishim imlav. We know this. Says Rashi, Alma chok kavuhu metekanas hachamim al Yisrael harachoikim, those who live far away. Lasaisin, that we always have to do 2 days. A feel below suffix. So when we say Shtei Kedushos, that's the whole notion that it's just a suffix. But the truth is, 1 day is a weekday. But they are instituting that no, we always have to keep 2 days. Why? It must be because it's considered like a Kedusha Achas. It has this like Yom Arichta. It's like this 1 long day. So l'chayra, that's why we keep 2 days of Yom Tov. Nowadays, why else would we keep 2 days of Yom Tov? So Rabbi Kavas Rav Mistaber. Actually, it's logical like Rav. After all, it says as follows: the Masechtas Rosh Hashanah did not. They used to, in order to let people know, they used to wave these torches on top of mountains, so people knew when Rosh Chodesh was. The Kutim who had specific desires for certain holidays, like Shavuot should fall on a Sunday, so Hiskinu Shehei Shluchim Yoitzin. That didn't work. They ended up making torches on different days to try to cause people to think that, again, the holidays fall on different days. So we have to send messengers. V'ilu batul kutim. Now the kutim are no longer Avdin and Chad Yoima. The heicha the mata shluchin Avdin and Chad Yoima. Wherever the shluchim would come, they would do one day. Now the hashne didn't b'kmita yarcha my time Avdin and Trei Yoima. So then why do we do 2 days? Mishum the shalchim itam was sent from there. He's haru b'minhag avosechem. Be very careful and cautious when it comes to our minhagim. After all, b'minhag avosechem bi'adechem. Zimnin the gazu malchus gezer b'asakal krule. You never know. One day we may end up having gezeras, and as Rashi says, shli yisask b'Torah. We may forget things because we're not going to learn Torah. We're not going to know all the calendars anymore, and therefore we're going to end up causing problems. We're not going to know which day really is Yom Tov. And Rashi says, what's the big issue? What's the big issue? Not that no one's learning Torah. Of course, that's a big issue. But Toichel chametz b'Pesach, Rashi says. An interesting part. The issue is you're going to eat chametz on Pesach, and therefore, for that reason, the din is we always will keep a second day, even though we know, and maybe it's really shtei kedusha, so therefore no is mutar b'zeh. However, the issue is what will be, what could be, and therefore for that reason we go strict. Okay, we're gonna stop here. Let's see a couple more questions. TA 9. Be'er shenol to be Yom Tov. If an egg that's born on Yom Tov, mahu salusa, can you roast it? Mahu ochul machar b'Shabbos umadua. Can you eat it the next day? Fine. So again, this is Yom Tov, and the next day is Shabbos. So to roast it is everyone holds it's usher on that day. You definitely can't. That's definitely not allowed. So what if the next day is Shabbos? To eat it, l'man di'omer mishum hachana, or l'man di'omer kedusha achas usher. L'man di'omer mishum gezerah shtei kedushos is shari. It's a little bit a difficult question, but that's the correct answer. Rabbi Omer Afmet the Kanas. Okay, we're not going to see that. We saw that. We'll see that tomorrow. Shabbos v'Yom Tov. Ma tam. What is the reason? Hasurin Beitzah shenolda b'zeh b'zeh. Why would you say if it was born on Shabbos that you can't eat it the next day on Yom Tov? So one answer, pashit, is because it's kedusha achas, or because of Rabbah that the issue of an egg is because of achana, and therefore it needs to be prepared from the week before. So therefore it was born on Shabbos, even though the next day is Yom Tov, it's a different day. When we say that it has to be that the preparation, even hachana b'the shemayim, had to have been done during the week. It was born on Shabbos, no the bazeh, also bazeh. Ad kan.